Hey, welcome to Teletype Talk, episode number 7. I am your host, Joe. Today we're going to be talking a lot about the TXO, Telex Output Expander for the Teletype, and a little bit about the TXI Input Expander. There's been I've had quite a few requests to talk about how to use the TXO as a 4-voice synth. So that's what we're going to be covering today. We're going to work our way slowly up to it. I'd actually hoped to cover a lot more about the TXO in this video, and I stopped recording and I was already at 45 minutes, so I guess there's going to be some more episodes about the TXO to cover the other things I wanted to hit on. Anyway, what we were just listening to is actually a kind of a self-patch between the Teletype and the TXO. So the 4 trigger ports on the TXO are... we're using each of their independent metronomes, but we're kind of syncing them. And we're using those to drive teletype scripts. And those teletype scripts are, in turn, triggering these 4 different voices, reading the note numbers from the patterns over here, and as well as triggering the envelopes that are built into the TXO. So we're going to be going through how to set that all up. As well as just kind of some live coding stuff to change things like the wave shape of the oscillators on the TSO, how to change like the envelope attack and decay times, even do some mixing by setting their voltages. So got a lot in store for you, and let's get started. All right, so to start taking a look at using the TXO as a 4-voice synth, first we're just going to kind of look at how the oscillators work. So I've got the 4 CV outputs patched into the inputs of my ER301. The ER301 is just going to be a mixer for me here, that's all. The first CV out I actually have patched through the Mordax data so that we can kind of take a look at these waveforms. So the first step to getting an oscillator running is to give it a frequency. So we'll do TO.OSC for oscillator and FQ to set the frequency, and we need to specify the CV number here, 1, and let's just set that to 130, which is roughly about a C note, and surprise, nothing happens. The reason for that, it's actually oscillating right now, but we didn't specify a voltage for that CV output. We need to do that. Right now it's just kind of oscillating from 0 volts to 0 volts. So let's put some voltage on that CV port. We'll do TOCV number 1, and let's set that to 5 volts. And now we begin to get some oscillations. Another way to specify the frequency is to do it by note number. So we could do TO.OSC and N for note number. We're going to do number 1. And let's set that to 48. So it seems like there was no change, and that's because that note number 48 corresponds to the same C note here. So if I wanted to bring this up an octave, I could just add 12 to this note number. So let's do that. Let's set this to note number 60. And you can hear it jumps up an octave. We can also control the amplitude of this waveform by changing that CV value. So if I wanted to make this quieter, I could do TOCV number 1 and volts, and let's set it to 2. And if I wanted to make it louder, I could set it to something higher, up to 10. Let's go ahead and do 10. And back to 5. Another thing we can do with these oscillators is to change the shape of the wave that they're producing. So right now we're looking at a sine wave here. It's actually got about, I think, 45 different waveforms in it. And then it's able to morph between those different waveforms. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to set this up so that we can sweep through them all and kind of watch them morph by sweeping a knob on the TXI. So let's first map that because TXI is going to go from 0 to 16,000 something. Let's just do TI param.map, and let's go, knob number 1, param number 1. Let's map that from 0 to 4,500. And I've actually got a clock coming in here into script number 8 to trigger it, and it's triggering very fast. You can actually see it here triggering from the maths, triggering very quickly. And so let's just set up script number 8 as it triggers very quickly to change between the different waveforms. So I'll go over here to my scripts and to script 8, and let's do to.osc.wave to set the wave shape for CV number 1, and we'll just set that to TI param 1, which should be going from 0 to 4,500. Let's also set X to the same thing, just so we can kind of watch it. So we'll do X ti.param 1. So if I pop over to my variable display now, X is set to 0, and we can see it's on a sine wave. Let me give it some volume, and then I'm just going to kind of sweep through this param knob. So you can see that we've really got the whole gamut of sounds there, from a pure tone sine wave at 0 all the way up to pretty much noise at 4,500, and just all kinds of waveforms, some pretty harmonically rich stuff in between there. So let's pull this out of here so we're not triggering script 8 anymore. The even waves are kind of on the hundreds, right? So if I go to TOSC.wave1, it's at 0 now. Well, it's set to 100, and we get to a kind of a perfect triangle. At 200, we get kind of a perfect ramp or saw. At 300, we get kind of a square shape. And this one is kind of special. There's a special command here to actually control the pulse width of this. So we can do to.osc.width. And let's see, let's start with like maybe 10%. We could go to 50 or anywhere between there. So these are just kind of percentage numbers that we're giving it, what percentage of the waveform. So quite a bit of capability there. Let's stop these oscillations. So we'll do TOSC.FQ CV number 1, and we'll set that to 0. I think my scope may be kind of stuck here. Interesting. That's probably because of my trigger source. So let's set that back to auto. And let's take a look at some envelopes. Let's go ahead and set a voltage on here again. TOCV 1 volt 5. And let's activate an envelope on this channel. So we'll do TO.envelope.activate number 1. And we'll set that to 1 for enabled. So activation to 1. And so now let's trigger that envelope. Let's do TO.env envelope trigger 1. And just kind of watch on the scope over here. And nothing. Okay, so to fully turn this oscillator off, let's use TO.OSC oscillator 1. We won't give it any .FQ or .N, and we'll just set that to 0. Let's set COCV to 5 volts so we can see it come up over here. And now let's activate the envelope. TO.ENV.activate 1 1. We see it drop back to 0. And now let's do TR.ENV.trigger 1. And we'll watch the scope. So you can see we get an envelope out of there when we trigger it. We can adjust some properties of this envelope. So we'll do TO, ENV. And let's set the decay time on this to something a little bit longer. Let's go out to 1 second, 1000 milliseconds. Oops, forgot my number 1 there. We'll trigger it again. Okay, looks like it maybe was at 1000. Let's go out to 2000. Trigger again. So you can see we're getting kind of an immediate attack and a 2-second decay. We can change the attack properties as well. TO.ENV attack number 1, and let's try that at maybe 200. We'll trigger it again, watching the scope. So now we get kind of a quick attack and a longer fall. So these are going up to 5 volts right now. We can also adjust the amplitude of these envelopes by setting the CV. Let's do TO.CV 1. Let's set that to 2 volts, and then we'll trigger the envelope again. And you can see we get a envelope with much less amplitude on it. Final thing for envelopes here, we're going to take a look at changing the shape. So right now, when we trigger this, we're seeing a linear envelope. We can actually adjust this and make it logarithmic. So let's do TO.ENV.log. Again, we're talking about CV port 1. And let's just set this to a 1. Or rather, that's TO.CV log number 1. And let's try setting that to a 1. We'll trigger the envelope again. And nothing happens. Let's set the CV to 8. And now you'll see we're getting more of a curve shape on here, right? Let's try increasing the log to a factor of 2. We'll trigger this envelope again. So definitely get some interesting things happening there. Set it back to a 1. So now we know how to make the CV ports oscillate. We know how to set up envelopes on them. But actually, those two things can be combined. So we've already got the envelope set up. Let's go ahead and set the oscillator oscillating once again. So we'll do TO OSC, and let's set it to a note number, and we'll do 48 once again. Oh, forgot my 1 there. And we don't hear anything because there's an envelope applied. So now let's go ahead and trigger that envelope. We can go ahead and change the pitch here and trigger again. I'm going to go ahead and turn the logarithm off. We'll set that back to 0. And I've got the voltage pretty high here. We'll go ahead and set that back TO CV1. Let's set that back to about 5 volts. And we've got that kind of set to that square wave shape. So let's go back to a sine wave. TO OSC wave 1, and we'll go back to 0. And we'll trigger the envelope again. All right, so let's put this all together. The patch I have is the same as I had before, the 4 TXO outs going to the 4 ends on the ER301, which is my mixer. And I've got this BeatStep Pro connected to for the first 4 trigger ends on the Teletype. So we're just going to be using the BeatStep Pro basically as a gate sequencer here. I'm going to be using the drum sequencer on it to just send in gates, and we're going to use that to control synth voices on the TXO. So let's go take a look at our scripts. Starting with script 1. Let me just basically make sure that's connected up. So we'll just do a regular TR pulse 1. And then if I fire the first gate, we should see the light there. Good, good. That's all working well. So what we want to do here is I'm going to use the patterns over here to set my note values. We'll just do a 16-step pattern. So I'll go to step 15 and do a Shift E, Shift L. And I'm going to do this with all 4 patterns so that they're all 16 steps long. And back in script 1 here. Actually, let's before we start with this, let's go ahead and go to our init script, and let's just set up the TXO as 4 different voices. So I'm going to do some loops in here. We'll do loop 1 to 4, and let's do to.env activate, and I for our loop counter, and we'll set that to a 1. Let's do loop 1 to 4 TO oscillate dot note I 0, and let's just go ahead and set a default voltage here. We'll do loop 1 to 4, and we'll do TO CVI, and let's set that to 5 volts for kind of a default. I'll go ahead and hit my F10 key to run the init script. Actually, let's do one more. Just to make this portable, we'll do loop 1 to 4, TO OSC wave I, and we'll set that to 0 for a sine wave. I'll do F10 again to run that script. All right, so let's see here. We'll go back to script 1 now. We've got it triggering pulse 1 just for a visual reference. We can leave that in. Let's do TO OSC dot note, and we're going to read this from the patterns. So we'll set that equal to PN next, and 0 for pattern number 0. And I forgot my 1 there. We're talking about CV port 1. And then let's do TO ENV trigger number 1. So what I hope will happen here is when I trigger this key from the BeatStep Pro, I don't hear anything because it is set pretty low. The frequency is set pretty low. Let's go ahead and set up an offset for this. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to set A equal to 48. Actually, let's just set B, C, and D equal to that as well. This is going to be kind of an offset so we can control the octaves of the different voices. Let's go back over to script 1. And let's add A to this one. So now we're hearing a little something. Back in live mode here, I can set the envelope decay and attack back to some shorter values. TU envelope attack 1. Let's just set that to, let's set it to 10 milliseconds. And we'll set the decay, let's set that to 1 second, 1000. Cool. And then I should be able to control the octave offset by setting A for this one. So let's try that one at like 60. And the other thing that should be happening as I'm manually triggering this is that it should be stepping through my pattern. So if we come back up here to the top, I can start to put some note numbers in here. So let's do like 12, 7, maybe a 5, and a 4. Cool. Let's set up the rest of the 4 voices. So if I come back to my scripts, I think I can go ahead and get rid of this line now. Feel pretty good it's working. I'm just going to go ahead and copy these 2 lines, Alt-C to copy. And let's paste those into script 2, and we'll just go through here and change some numbers. So in this case, we're talking about TXO port number 2. We're going to add B to this to be our offset, and we're going to refer to pattern 1. And down here we'll trigger number 2. Same thing here, we'll paste into script 3. Switch our reference to oscillator 3. Change the offset to variable C. And we'll advance pattern 2 and grab its value, and then we'll trigger number 3. 2, 1, 2, 3. Yep. All right, and then the last one. We'll set the 4th one. Add D as the offset. Pattern next for pattern number 3, and then we'll trigger envelope 4. So back on the BeatStep Pro, let's first look over here. This first gate is offset 60. The next one is set to 48. And let's set all these attacks and decays the same to start. So just back here in live mode, I'll do loop 1 to 4. TO envelope attack I 50. And we'll set the decay to 1000. Cool. We'll make sure the 3rd and 4th pads are working here on this. Let's set C, just so we can hear a difference, up to 72, and we'll set D maybe to 36. So here's the 3rd pad, and the 4th one. Seems like that's all working. Let's go ahead and set up some trigger sequences. So we'll start with this one. I'm going to start the beat step playing. And we'll just turn on some triggers. I'll move to the second one, which is connected to trigger input 2 here. And for this third one, slow this down quite a bit, try to get these in sync. Back over here on the teletype, we'll do loop 0 to 3, pattern index, pn.i, and we'll set this to 0 now. So they are moving at different rates. Bring the tempo back up here. And now I can start to play with the note values. So let's set it up so we can then change the different wave shapes of each of the oscillators and kind of dial in different sounds. Let's come back over to our init script. And let's go ahead and set up the mapping for all of those TI knobs. So we'll do loop 1 to 4, ti.param.map I, and we'll go 0 to 4500. I'll hit F10 to run that init script again. And back over here on script number 8, looks like we've already got most of this set up, but let's try to loop this. Loop 1 to 4, it's not going to fit, is it? That's all right. Let's cut this line. We'll do a loop 1 to 4, and we'll fire script 7. Back on script 7, we can now paste this line, and we'll just change this 1 to an I, and this one to an I. That way each of the 4 knobs, 1 through 4, is setting each of the wave shapes for each of these 4. And I think we can get rid of this line. And let's see how that goes. change the octave range for each of these. So let's drop maybe A down a little bit. It's a little loud. We can actually do some mixing right on the teletype, of course, right? We can do TO.CV3. We can turn that way down, set it to 2 volts. Cool. Hope you get the idea. I could actually go on messing with this for hours and really get it sounding nice, but I think you guys have got the idea now, so I'm going to move on a little bit. What we're going to do is take this Beat Step Pro out of the equation. We're going to patch the Teletype and TXO. We're going to do some self-patching here, patch it back into itself, and let the TXO actually be the gate sequencer now. Okay, so we're back and we're self-patched here. We've actually just got the 4 TR outputs on the TXO, patch back into trigger inputs 1 through 4 on the Teletype. Nothing like a self-patched Teletype for some good fun. So the TXO has a metronome. Actually, it's got 4 metronomes, and they're all independent metronomes, so they can actually be running at completely different clock rates. So before we were triggering Teletype with the Beat Step Pro here, our external gate sequencer, what we're actually going to do now, we've got this patch set up just like before, and instead of triggering it with something external, we're going to trigger it using these 4 independent metronomes. So the first thing we have to do is set the rate on them. I'm going to try to keep them all in sync. They are independent, so they could go completely wild if you want. Let's come back to our init script. And let's do loop 1 to 4, and we'll do TO, TR. I might have to look this one up. Let's do TO m.bpm for number I. And I'm actually going to set this to something pretty slow. And the reason for that is with these metronomes, there is a multiplier, kind of a clock multiplier function for them. But there's not a divider. So if I start them as slow as I want, I'll be able to multiply their speed up. I just won't be able to divide it down. So I'm going to start with something kind of slow, like 60 BPM. Let's see here. That is the end of my script. Looks like I might need another free one here. Looks like script number 6 is free. Let's go ahead and Alt-X to cut this line out. And we'll just run the script number 6 at the end of our init script, and we'll continue our init script on script number 6. I'll paste this line in with Alt-V. And let's do one more loop. And we'll do to.tr.m for metronome activate number I, and we'll set that to 1. Let's go ahead and fire our init script again, which should actually fire init and then script number 6 by pressing F10. So let's turn those off for now. Let's bring them up maybe kind of one at a time here. So we'll start with the first one, to.tr.m activate number 1, and we'll set that to 1. And our script's still the same, so we're still running through our pattern here. So let's take this one. So some of these wave forms are pretty noisy, and I just kind of want to, I guess, demonstrate here that we can use all of these different pieces of the TXO, like the envelope and the oscillator and all that together, but we can also kind of break them apart into their independent pieces, right? So for this one, we've got a waveform going right now. We've got the envelope enabled on it. Let's turn that envelope off. And now we should hear it droning. So let's actually take that droning oscillator. I'm going to take my TR port 1 here, which is triggering on its metronome. I'm going to mult that into an envelope generator, like a maths here. Let's take that output and let's run that into the frequency of a filter. And let's run this into the input. Bring this out of the output. Cool. So now we don't really have the envelope applied anymore. We're using an external envelope generator, and we're running that through a filter and kind of using a filter to control the envelope of that sound. Let's bring up another one of the metronomes. on my so we'll do to dot tr dot m dot activate. So you can hear those metronomes are completely independent, right? They're not really in sync right now. Let's go ahead and sync them. We'll do to dot, I think it's m sync, and here we're giving it a device number. I've only got one TXO attached, so it's going to be device number 0. And that didn't really seem to do it. And that's because it's not device 0, it's device 1 through 8. Let's try that again with a 1. Cool, so right now they're both firing at the same rate, and as I mentioned before, we can put a multiplier on here. So let's do to.tr.multiply. Is it dot multiply or is it dot m multiply? There's so many of these. It's dot m dot multiply 2, and let's multiply it by 2 so that it moves twice as fast. Let's adjust the waveform on number 2 here. There we go, I like that. Let's bring up number 3. So to dot tr let's go ahead and sync them again. It's a pretty gnarly waveform there. Let's go ahead and multiply that one by 3. So to.tr.m.multiply number 3. We'll multiply that by 3. Let's go ahead and take the decay time down on that. And let's bring up number 4. Let's go ahead and give that a multiplier. Let's go ahead and sync again. Let's change that multiplier to 8. And we can turn that down. So probably what we're going to do is go ahead and sync on the slowest clock. which is going to be number 1 is the one we have moving the slowest. We can go ahead and add a sync event here. And let's see how that sounds. We can still change any of our octaves around here. Let's try changing C to 60. I think the last thing I want to talk about here is slewing the oscillators. It doesn't work quite the same. I mean, the sound works about the same, but it's just kind of a different command to achieve some oscillator slew because we're actually changing the rate at which we're changing the oscillator frequency. Let's do that with voice number 3. So we'll do to.osc.slew number 3, and let's change that to, I don't know, let's try 50 and hear what that sounds like. All right, hopefully you guys get the idea. There's a lot of exploration to do here, and definitely a lot of fun with live coding to be had. All right, I think we're going to call this a wrap because we're already approaching the 50-minute mark. Had a few more things I wanted to show you, but we'll just do those in another episode. So kind of the key things to take away, the Teletype output expander, the TXO, has a ton of stuff going on in it. It's got, oscillators, it's got envelopes, it's got independent metronomes or clocks, and we can use these different things in combination with each other to create an entire synth voice just within the TXO. But we can also break these things out and use them separately. We could use just the envelope from one of the channels, or we could use the clock for something completely different, or we can even have kind of an oscillator droning and have some external gear that's kind of controlling the VCA or the VCF and the envelopes. So it's really a versatile device, and one of the things I like about it is it's really exact, right? So sometimes it's fun to kind of dial things in with a knob. Sometimes just what you're going for, and the TXO allows you to really key in some values for all your different parameters, or hook them up to knobs with something like the TXI. So you really kind of get the best of both worlds there. Anyway, hope you guys and or gals enjoyed and learned something today, and we'll start getting some more use out of your TXO. Till next time, take care.